This is a normal Tuesday afternoon. You gotta see our Wednesday parties. Look who showed up, Pharrell!
Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. I forgot to set the thing to the right front plate, so welcome to the stream this evening. I've got windows all over the place. Put them so that I can see them, and we'll have some light on the subject. Turn that camera a little bit so I don't have to lean over to one side so you can see me. Good evening. And let's see if the pyro turns on. Yeah, I've got the right thing plugged in. Good evening, everybody. We're doing the background tonight, or doing some more of the background tonight, which should prove interesting. Only from the perspective of hope it's not going to ruin the picture. So I want to try and see if I can get this, use this tool with a little bit more speed than I have been doing, because otherwise doing this background will turn out to be quite a very slow process, and I might get bored with it. In fact, I'm quite likely to get bored with it if it's too slow. But I do need to learn how to use this particular tool. I have got the feeling it will become a favourite tool if I work out how to actually use it properly. And that's going to be the actual trick, but possibly not something for this particular piece. I really would like to try and finish off this background sky this evening if I can. But there again, I'm also not going to rush it and spoil it. It's not really too bad. Let me try a little bit warmer. Fear Reaper 7, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. I don't think I've seen you around for a while, unless you've been lurking. Starting to look awesome, thank you. But only starting? You mean it doesn't already? Yeah. I've got to sort of match colours with what's over here, but as I go up the sky, this is going to get lighter and lighter. At least that's the intention. So, how are you doing, Fear Reaper 7? Turn this round and just catch up against the giraffe. Now this needs to be fairly dark, as you can see here. That's darker than out this way. So I want to try and get that sort of colour on this side here, at least up as we come up the neck, just to match it across. It is, after all, the sky, so it's unlikely to change just behind the giraffe. I want to try and do a lot of it in as close to one pass as I can. It doesn't look like I'm going to be that successful about it, but it's about setting the right temperature and slowing down the tool enough to try and get most of the colour I want in one go. Reason being, if I do it in lots and lots of passes, which is perfectly feasible, it just takes a lot longer. And I want to, part of what I want to do is to practice being able to do these pieces in shorter timescales than they currently take. Just had the finals for the semester. Oh, do you think you've done well? I hope you have. No school for the next 10 weeks. You don't know. I was about to say, you don't know you're born. You do know you're born because you're alive. But yeah. Well, for the next 10 weeks, I'll be at school. I won't be at school. I'll be at work, working away, while you're able to laze away and enjoy the summer. Never mind. There will come a time when you'll be doing doing exactly the same thing. Wishing that you two had 10 weeks holiday in the middle of the year. Okay, well, that in itself is good. It's a long time since I was at school, but I don't think it ever stopped me having hobbies and things. I think I managed those. I'm fairly certain I managed those while I was at school. In fact, most of the time I managed to get most of my homework done whilst I was at school, before I came home in the evening, and then I was able to do all the things that I wanted. 3D modelling again, or try to draw. You can always do both, of course. They kind of complement each other quite well, and drawing can help you visualize 3D space as well, which can be a useful thing when you start drawing with perspective and that sort of thing in mind. It gives you an understanding of how space is perceived, which can be good for 3D modelling. So as we come up the neck here, it's going to get lighter, so I don't want to be hanging around with this. If you hear bells in the background, by the way, that's just the local church, which isn't too far away. The bell ringers do practice tonight. Or they have been practicing tonight. We kind of get used to it, of course, so you don't really hear them quite so much. But I am guessing it'll probably show up on stream. Irish Lurker, good evening. Thank you very much for that. I'm glad you think it looks good. I think it looks good, so that makes two of us at least, which is nice. As I say, I'm doing sky here. It's largely speaking, the intention is that this is kind of like dusk, sunset. So you've got quite a rich sky in the background, which of course graduates up as you go up. But also being sort of a sky, it's not a perfect colour. You're going to get slight variations in colour. So odd sort of variations actually don't concern me a great deal. It's a nice way of gaining practice with things like smooth colouring like this, in that if you don't actually achieve it, it actually isn't detrimental to the piece, as it might be if I was trying to do, I don't know, a shiny car, for example. So this tool which I'm using here, which is a large shader, which is intended to make doing large areas easier, and indeed does, it still takes practice to work out how to use it properly and learn how much heat it needs and things like that. So the fact that I'm still getting slight uneven marks is part of the practice, but it does mean I don't have to worry about them in terms of the image. Fear Reaper 3 at least. 3 at least. Oh, 3 years. That took me a little while to think back the conversation to connect that one. Yeah. Well, you'll get your turn. Even when I went to university, I didn't get 10 weeks off, because when I was at university, I was also working. So when I wasn't actually at university, I was back at work. So no free time in that respect. Of course, the one advantage, well, I was about to say the one advantage for work is no homework, but that's not always true. Now, I'd quite like to blend this a little bit, so because that's quite a sharp edge at the moment. I'd like to sort of just blend it into this area, which means darkening this area down. It sort of is curved-ish. It's quite light over here, getting darker towards this end, so I want to sort of curve it slightly. Now you do sometimes get sort of quite strong graduations like that in terms of background when you so background sky when you look at a sunset sometimes, especially if there's any sort of distant clouds. But the clearer the sky, the more sort of gradual it tends to be. Now, with this tool being wider than the ones I've been using before, and I've got more places, by tilting it you can use all sorts of edges of it. Part of the trick I'm having to learn with this is actually to hold it flat and use more of the blade, the edge, the flat bit on the bottom. Because of course, if I'm after like a wide brush to speed things up a little bit, then that's what I've got to use, the whole of the base or the shoe of this particular pen. So you've been obviously busy, Irish Lurker, because I don't believe you've been around for a while, unless you've been living up to your namesake and lurking in the background. How have you been? What you will see me doing a lot of tonight is looking up. So instead of looking at the camera or apparently looking at the piece that I'm working on, you will see me looking in that direction. What I'm actually doing is looking at the OBS output window, because what that's doing is obviously it's showing me what you guys are getting to see on the stream. But what is actually happening is it's a bit like I've got up and stepped back about 3 feet. And I'm seeing it from a distance, and also the camera is actually distorting the colours a little bit. You're tending to see this more as a black than a golden rich brown, but that in itself is making it show up with a little bit more contrast. So I can see things like a little white patch or lighter patch just around here, for example, which probably means I could do with just darkening that down. And one of the things I can do is do this like I was using a graphics tablet. So I'm working with my hand whilst looking up at the image of what I'm working on, a bit like I was doing an electronic piece of art, even though I'm not. But that's something I've discovered while streaming. It sometimes is quite a useful thing to just be able to look up like that and get a different perspective on what it is I'm doing. Okay. And this is a bit of a light patch. Again, it doesn't look bad. I mean, it's an interesting sort of sky, but I do want to make it a little bit more uniform than it is at the moment. I'm guessing Irish Lurker is doing exactly what his name says. He's gone back to lurking. Okay, I'm now starting to darken this down a little bit, enough to blend it in. Oops. Just occasionally though you get slightly darker marks than you intended, as you can see there. So we might darken that down still a little bit more. In actual fact, I've got a dark edge across here, so I might do something about that. In fact, I probably will do something about that, and we'll do it now. In some ways as well, this can sort of look like, if you had a mist in the background that was lit up, it's a bit like that as well. So that you know, some of the shapes you see in the distance could be things like mountain ranges, even though this is meant to be sort of the savanna of Africa or somewhere like that. Although I've no idea whether it actually is, and I don't know if this is an African elephant or an Indian elephant. I do know you're supposed to be able to tell the difference using their ears, but I can't actually remember what the rules are. or the distinguishing differences are, I suppose, because I don't think anybody's told the elephants that there's actually a rule as to what ears they're supposed to have. And could you imagine a mummy elephant talking to the baby? Now then, little son, you're supposed to grow big ears because you're a type of elephant. But there again, maybe that's precisely what they do. I can't talk to an elephant, so maybe that does happen. After all, humans often comment on things like big ears and Noddy and the other characters. Well, for those of you who are somewhat younger than I am, who have perhaps no idea what I've just talked about, they were Noddy and Big Ears, children's characters, children's books characters, and they got turned into sort of children's television programs. Noddy used to drive a bright yellow and red car, if I remember correctly. Okay. I might fade this black a little bit more, I think. It's just slightly too solid still. What I really should do is get on with the rest and come back. I do have a tendency to get sort of bogged down in details sometimes, but I shouldn't when I'm doing things. I should just do things overall, then come back and fill in details afterwards. Now, just around here is where it could get interesting, because as you will notice here, you can't see the edge of the trunk. It disappears into the background. You can sort of just almost see an edge, but not quite, so I may have to change the colour around there, either of the background or of the trunk, so darken one of them in order that the other stands out. But we'll see about that in a moment. It may well be that I just look at it and go, well, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it as it is. Because your eye will follow curves anyway, so sometimes you can see things that aren't actually there. You know, like there's no join. You can't see the join between these two. There's they're the same colour, but because you're following the curve, you can see it. But on stream, that's somewhat more hidden. You do have to be a little bit careful when you're doing this, or just generally, if anybody's doing it or wants to try it. Don't start in the same place every time, because you get a darker edge. So start fairly randomly in the overlap, because I am overlapping what I've already done, and keep this thing moving as you land it. Keep it, land it like an aircraft would. Keep it moving. Don't stop, because if you stop, you create a darker patch that may be not what you wanted. Now, one of the useful things I came across on the internet today, from the perspective of the art that I do, is I do scraper board, and one of the things I came across today is some varnish, and I can use in my airbrush. That should be quite good to stabilise the surface of scraper board, which is something I've been looking for a while. I just came across some references to some stuff which I'm kind of familiar with, because it's made by a company called Createx, who make some of the paints that I use. So I shall maybe try some of that, and then I'll actually be able to protect some of my scraper board stuff, which of course at the moment is sat in some very safe places, so nothing